everyone, I'm Brad, and this is Watch, Rate, Heart, and it's Friday, which means it's time for the watch list. It's where I discuss the movies I've watched and my feelings about them. And this week, I'm focusing on films from the Master of Suspense, Alfred Hitchcock. We've got 3 of his films to discuss, plus one from 1995 that could be considered Hitchcockian. Maybe. So what are we waiting for? Let's get with the stories of intrigue and suspense with our first film.
May I ask you a personal question?
I've been hoping you would.
What do you expect to get out of being so nice to me?
Probably a lot more than you're willing to offer.
I know.
And the first film is To Catch a Thief, starring Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.7 out of 5, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 93% fresh, and it was nominated for 3 Oscars. It won 1 for Best Color Cinematography. And speaking of the cinematography, it is gorgeous in this film. Man, the colors really pop, especially in certain settings. Some of the beach settings, for example, are really good looking, but I think the scenes in the villas, especially in the villa that Cary Grant is in the beginning of the movie, are absolutely stunning to look at. But let's get with the story in the film itself. I gotta be honest, when the film gets good and gets really fun is when Cary Grant meets Grace Kelly in the film. When they meet and they start to interact with each other, that's when the film gets really fun. It's within about, I think, the first 30 minutes of the film when they start to meet, but when it does, the film gets really fun and entertaining. And honestly, the best part of the film is Grace Kelly. Not only is she stunning in this movie, which, I mean, when is she not stunning? But she's also very charismatic. But I think, for the most part, she carries this film. Cary Grant is good. I think he's good as the thief, but really the film gets really good when Grace Kelly is in the shot. And when she's in the scene, the film just gets infinitely better. But that leads to a bit of a problem I have with the film. See, the film is not about Grace Kelly and Cary Grant, really. It's really about Cary Grant and him being framed for a bunch of robberies that are happening. That principal plot point is weak. And I honestly stopped caring about Grant being framed as the film went on. And I think that's because the charisma between him and Kelly is so good, and Kelly herself is so good, that I just kind of didn't care so much about what the overall plot was. And I had to remind myself, oh, wait a minute, this is about Cary Grant's character trying to find out who framed him. It's not really about Cary Grant and Grace Kelly's character. But when it sticks to those two people, the film gets really good, but when it goes into the plot of him being framed, it kind of slows down. And honestly, I think that's a big problem with the film. That's why I'm giving this film 3.5 out of 5 and not a 4 out of 5. It's a good film. It's fun. I had a really good time watching it. It has gorgeous cinematography. Grace Kelly just holds this film together, and when her and Grant are together, there is real charisma, and it's a very fun film. But when they are not together, it's not bad, but it's not as good as it could be. And I could really care less about Cary Grant's character being framed and him finding out who did it and what the principal plot was. But overall, 3.5 out of 5 for me for To Catch a Thief. And as with every episode of the watch list, I only give you my opinion, but the opinions of people on the Letterboxd community. Let's start with Robert. Robert gives it 3.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And he said, Cary Grant refers to Grace Kelly as quietly attractive in this film. Quietly attractive. Grace Kelly. I forgot about that. That is really, she is one of the most stunning women I've ever seen. And he's referring to her as, oh, you're quietly attractive. I'm like, oh man, I almost forgot about that. That's good on you, Robert. Let's get into our second review. This is from Darren R. Darren R gives it 3 stars out of 5, and he says, stunning use of location shooting on the French Riviera and Technicolor VistaVision. Too bad in service of a mediocre, wrongfully accused man looks to clear himself plot that evolves into a romantic melodrama. But I never bought the chemistry between Grant and Kelly. The only suspense remaining was wondering what Edith Head would dress Grace Kelly in for her next scene. Definitely mid-tier Hitch. I think it's a little harsh, but again, I agree with him on the mediocre, wrongfully accused part of the plot. But I thought the chemistry between Grant and Kelly was really good. But I think, honestly, it's because Kelly is really good. I thought Grant was okay. I thought he was good. But really, the film was much more entertaining when Grace Kelly was in there. Not just for her looks, because she's just that charismatic. I love her character in this film. And finally, our last review is from Professor Dorkman. Professor Dorkman gives it 2 stars out of 5. He did not like this film. And Professor Dorkman says, a thriller that packs no thrills at all. The chemistry between Cary Grant and Grace Kelly is enough to capture an audience for the running time. Scenes come on screen, do what they require, and leave without a single afterthought. Not the most forgettable entry from Hitchcock, but not the last. See, I don't disagree with Professor Dorkman, but I think he's just being a little harsh with the rating. The chemistry is definitely there with Grant and Kelly, but again, I think Kelly is the best part of this film. I guess I kind of have to be honest with him. He does have a point. I'm not really wowed by a lot of the scenes in the film. It looks gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to the plot itself, I have to agree with Professor Dorkman. But again, Grace Kelly is so good in this film, and the film is so beautiful in the scenes that I kind of enjoyed it a lot more than I think Professor Dorkman did. But again, I see where he's coming from.
Want to hear one of my ideas for a perfect murder?
The next Hitchcock film is Strangers on a Train, starring Farley Granger, Ruth Roman, and Robert Walker. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.1 out of 5, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 98% fresh, and it was nominated for Best Black and White Cinematography. And I think the first thing I have to point out is how good Robert Walker's performance is as the psychotic stranger in this film. He kind of hams it up sometimes, but I think he's easily the best part of this movie. He basically plays this really unhinged person who convinces himself that the main character wanted his wife killed. And just the way he acts his performance is just really good. I think the film's also tightly constructed. It doesn't really have a slow point to it, and it kind of keeps the tension up real well. And I think the stalker section of the film, which is really the first half of the film, I think keeps the tension up real nice. It really is a good part of the film. And finally, I think the last positive point I want to put out is Patricia Hitchcock's performance in this film. I think she's pretty funny and enjoyable, and she kind of reminded me of true crime female podcasters pretty much now who talk about true crime all the time. I thought her performance was really funny. I do have some issues with the film. I think the lead, which is Farley Granger in the film, is pretty boring. I really didn't care so much about his plight and what he's going through. I also felt the same way about the lead female, which is Ruth Roman. I didn't think she was all that interesting. I think the second half of the film is not as good as the first, but it does have this really good scene in a carousel, which I was actually stunned watching. I was like, whoa, that is crazy. But overall, I'm going to give Strangers on a Train 3 out of 5 stars. It's a good film. I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. I think Robert Walker is the best part of this movie. And I think the plot, even though the second half of it isn't as good as the first, it is tightly constructed enough and tense enough to really keep it interesting and entertaining. That said, the leads are boring, and again, the second half is really not as good as the first. But yeah, overall, 3 out of 5 for me for Strangers on a Train. Now, I'm going to talk about the Letterboxd reviews, but I gotta be honest, there's a lot of 4s and 5s in the reviews, but there is a good amount of 3s as well, which I was a little surprised by. Let's start with Violator Ghoul. Violator Ghoul gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and he says, now this is what I want out of a Hitchcock film. The tension never lets up, and I did not see that ending coming. One of my new favorite films by the Master of Suspense. And there are a lot of reviews like Violator Ghoul here. They seem to really like this film. I guess I don't understand why I didn't get that feeling from it. I'm a little jealous because a lot of people seem to love this film, and I'm kind of lukewarm on it. Let's get into the second review, which is from Michael Ashton. Michael Ashton gives it 4 stars out of 5, and he says, that final set piece is insane. This Hitchcock guy knows what he's doing. Again, yes, that final set piece is really good. I can't deny that. That is a really good sequence, even though I also felt it was a tad silly, but I thought it was really well done. And finally, the third review is from Theo. Theo gives it 3 stars out of 5, and he says, this is why I always wear AirPods in public so nobody starts talking crazy to me. Yeah, it really pays to be antisocial, doesn't it? But really, I do like the film. I think it's good. I just don't love it the way some other people love it too. Maybe after a second viewing, I might actually like it more. But I do understand why people do really like this film. There is a good tension to it that just keeps up throughout the entire film. But the second half of the film wasn't as great as the first, and I could care less about the lead. So yeah, that's my feelings on that. And the final Hitch film is Marnie, starring Tippi Hedren and Sean Connery. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.6 out of 5 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 80% fresh. I gotta be honest, there are things in this film that makes me feel like Hitchcock was pushing himself to do something more abstract and, I guess for a lack of a better word, artsy. The film uses a lot of interesting techniques and it uses a lot of color to make the story a lot more interesting. And it deals with heavier subjects in, I think, a slightly deeper way than other films he has done, has attempted. So I really feel like in this one, Hitchcock was going for something a little bit different than what he's used to. And honestly, some of the scenes in this film are also very well shot. We have scenes in the boat, we have some scenes in the mansion that Sean Connery's character is in, and the scenes in Baltimore as well. They just are very good looking in the film. There are some issues that I have that are pretty strong. I think Tippi Hedren is a mixed bag. I think when she's trying to be cold and withdrawn, she's actually pretty good. She can actually hold that side of the character very well and is believable in that. But I think she's pretty bad when emoting, especially when she is flipping out and when she's having her mental health problems, or she's acting strange, or she's acting disturbed. It comes off as kind of campy in a weird way. That's not the only thing that I had a problem with either. There are certainly some choices that this film made in regarding to Marnie's husband in the film. I won't say exactly what happens, but if you have seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. But there's something happens in the middle of the film with Sean Connery's character and with Tippi Hedren's character that really colors the rest of the film in a very weird light. And the fact that Sean Connery's character is the person that's trying to help Marnie go through what she's going through, it just comes off as a really weird and unsettling choice in the film. And the film doesn't make it feel unsettling. It just kind of makes it feel like that's kind of just what happened. But I will say the mental health angle is interesting in some spots, especially with how Hitchcock interprets it. I'm going to say from that time period, because there are some things that the film does that just feels pretty messy and out of date by today's standards, such as Sean Connery's character being the de facto shrink in the film. I am very mixed on Marnie. On the one hand, I think the film does some interesting things, but on the other hand, it makes some choices that really fumble the execution. I'm going to give the film 2.5 out of 5. I originally was going to give it 2 out of 5, but in all honesty, the film does some interesting things that I think if you are a Hitchcock fan, you might want to check it out and just see where he's coming from here. The film is definitely a mixed bag. I did not like Tippi Hedren all that much in the film. I think she plays the cold and calculated version of the character very well, but when she's going through her emotional issues is where I was really kind of laughing, going, yeah, this is way too much. And the decisions that were made in regards to the story of the film are kind of messed up considering what happens at the end of the film. It bathed in this kind of weird light that I don't think the film was intending to. So in that end, I think that's kind of a problem. And I know some of you are going to say, oh, but Brad, that was like the times. It's just how people thought that way. And okay, fine, but I still can't look past that part and going like, ooh, that doesn't really look good. But anyway, 2.5 out of 5 for me for Marnie. Alright, I'm going to do 2 reviews when it comes to Letterboxd here, and I'm going to give the first review to Joseph Scorantino. He gives it 4 stars out of 5, and he says, excellent companion piece to Vertigo, but one where the male lead loses most of his sympathetic portrayal, and the main headspace is that of a woman's. A fine psychological portrayal of the titular character, plus in Connery, a projection of Hitchcock's own obsessions and neuroses, with a deceptively bleak ending. Yeah, I'm not going to really go into, I guess, the personality of Hitchcock in here. I know there are some things he did in the past that are questionable, we'll say. But yeah, I can see where he's coming from here. And I have part of a review from Jerry. Jerry gives it 2 stars out of 5. I would recommend if you go into the description of this video and you look for the link for Jerry's profile, friend Jerry and look at his review of Marnie to see what he wrote about Marnie in that, because he has some good points. But the part I'm going to show is Jerry's 2-star review is, maybe this film's way of dealing with trauma processing felt new and even shocking back in 1964, but now it just feels exploitative and is complicated by the fact that not only is this Hitchcock's most masturbatory work that I have seen, the Connery character is clearly just his dream stand-in, or at least that's how I saw it, but by choosing to frame certain subjects in a questionable at best light, Marnie becomes one of the few films I would consider truly problematic. And that's where I was having some problems with the film. Not just because it was problematic, there certainly are problematic things in this film, but I just think that where Hitchcock was going in the film, he was going for something that I don't think he really reached. But again, if you are a fan of Hitchcock and you like his work, I really think you should at least watch it, because there's some people like Joseph who really liked it, and there's people like Jerry and me who were kind of mixed on it.
Sure, there's a very good reason for why you'd go out of your way to antagonize them like that.
Sometimes being a bitch is all a woman has to hold on to.
Finally, our last film is from 1995, and that's Dolores Claiborne, starring Jennifer Jason Leigh and Kathy Bates, directed by Taylor Hackford. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.7 out of 5 and a Rotten Tomato score of 86% fresh. This is probably not going to be a long review. I think this is a very good movie. I think it's paced very well. It's got a good murder mystery story to it. I wasn't really bored at all throughout the entire film. It was definitely very well made. I think Kathy Bates gives a really good performance as the title character in the film, and I also think that the supporting performances are very good, but I really want to highlight David Strathairn in this film. I think he plays the abusive, drunk husband of Dolores very well. And to be honest, when it comes to Dolores Claiborne, that's really it. There's really no negatives I have with the film, but there really isn't a lot that I would say that really jumps out to me. It's a solidly made film. It's got a good story, and it's got a really good performance by Kathy Bates. That's about it, really. I'm going to give this film 3.5 out of 5. Great performance by Kathy Bates, good performance by David Strathairn, and it's a good murder mystery story. Very well paced, and the story is well done. So 3.5 out of 5 for me for Dolores Claiborne. Now let's get into our final reviews from our Letterboxd community, and this is Zavi. Zavi gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Zavi says, genuinely one of my favorite movies. The 3 main actresses are amazing. The flashback scenes were beautifully shot, contrasting the brutal reality being portrayed. The vivid transitions between past and present still give me chills. Okay, so the 3 main actresses are Kathy Bates, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and I guess it's the child actress who played a young Jennifer Jason Leigh in the film? I could see that, absolutely. Or it could be the one that played the boss, and that could have been it too, so that I might be wrong on that. And finally, our last review is from Film Dioxide. Film Dioxide gives it 3.5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Film Dioxide says, Kathy Bates is much better here than in Misery. And you know what? I haven't seen Misery, so I can't really say if I agree or disagree or not, but there are a number of reviews that are on the Dolores Claiborne page for Letterboxd that say this exact same thing, that they think that she should have won the Oscar for this movie instead of Misery. And I have to admit, it's a very good performance. So I don't disagree that it deserves some kind of recognition, but again, I haven't seen Misery yet, so I can't really comment on which is better. And that is it for this episode of Watch, Rate, Heart. But before I go, let me ask you a question. What's your top 3 Hitchcock films? Mine are Psycho, Rope, and my favorite Hitchcock film is Rebecca. If you liked any of the reviews I highlighted in this episode, you could check out the video description for a link to their Letterboxd profile, and be sure to give them a follow and let them know Brad from WatchRateHeart sent you. You can follow me at Letterboxd and X at WatchRateHeart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and share with your friends. I'm Brad from WatchRateHeart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.